Hi, I'm Noah, and today we're going to talk about the portal animation that I did when I showed the Picustom tutorials. Quick disclaimer, this is actually the third time I'm recording this, and the last time was 6 months ago, so let's hope I remember everything I did. But two things before we get started. The first thing is I'm not going to be doing this tutorial from scratch. I'll rather walk through the whole file, and I'll try to explain everything in detail so you'll know what I'm doing. And the second thing is that this file is now going to be part of the advanced Picustom tutorials you can download on Gumroad. And people who already bought that should be able to download this for free. And I also made some changes to the Picustom Collider example, so the free examples are also updated. And yeah, let's get going. In this first part, we are going to be talking about the actual 3D geometry behind the portal and about the shaders. The base of the portal is really just this shape 3D in set tutorials. I only decreased the section size a little bit and I increased base and height subdivisions. This is really important. If we look closer and set this to wireframe, we can see that this is a very dense mesh, and this is necessary because we are actually going to deform the actual mesh. Next, I've taken a transform 3D and only used this to push this into an oval shape. So here you would need to deselect log x, y, and z and decrease the x size a little bit. Next, we have the Bender 3D, and I've used this to animate this shell opening animation and later the closing animation as well. And the Bender 3D really is just like in any other 3D application, a bend deformer or a bend modifier, or however it's called. This will take your geometry, bend it, and you have some range sliders which will limit the effect to certain parts of the mesh. And I've simply changed that to bend in the z-axis, and I animated the range slider. So first it's active everywhere, then I've increased the numbers to 1 and 1, which means this isn't active anywhere, and for the closing animation I've done the same, just in the reverse direction. This really gives us this nice shell opening animation. So this is our animation we get from the Bender 3D. Next, I feed that into a Displace 3D, and as the name suggests, it displaces a geometry along its normals, and this Displace 3D is simply driven by a fast noise. And on this fast noise, I only change the parameters a little bit, like increasing detail and scale, decreasing contrast and brightness a little bit, setting this to discontinuous to get this kind of noise, and increasing the seething rate so I have this animation. And this will then be plugged into a transform tool, and this is set to mirror, and I've placed my rectangle, and it's important that this is set to a square resolution, and I've set this to the upper left edge. And the reason for that is simply so I get a seamless texture. For example, I can show you right here. If I were to disable this, I would get this nasty edge because our texture isn't tileable. And adding this, well, we can still see a slight edge, but for our purposes, this is fine. We could blend the edges a little bit, and then this edge wouldn't be visible anymore. But for our purposes, this is fine. And the nice thing about this is this will always work if you have a square texture. This will always work because Fusion uses a relative coordinate system. So the center and the size values will be the same for you as well. Next, I've put that into a brightness contrast, and this is only here to increase the contrast even more, really clamping these values. And this gives us this very nice wobbly animation. And that's all for the base portal animation. Next, we have the replace material, and this is really just to add the shader. And we could have plugged it into the shape 3D as well, but I like to keep the hierarchy clear, so I've chosen to add it later. And this is the main color is actually driven by this fast noise again. I've changed a few of these parameters, again, increasing detail and contrast. And Again, this needs to be a square resolution because we want this to work as a texture. And again, I've used the very same transform settings to mirror this so I get a seamless texture. And I plugged it into a ward shader. Ward simply because I wanted this very long specular point because this is giving me some interesting effects. Next, I've plugged that shader into another shader, and that is the reflect shader. And as the name suggests, this can create a reflection map or add in a reflection map. And this is really just here to give us even more details. Here I've used another fast noise. This time it's actually set to a gradient, so I can have more than 2 colors. And again, increase detail, increase contrast a little bit. And this time I didn't actually tile this into 4 sections, but I only moved this to the left. Here, as you can see, center to 0. And again, set this to mirror. And this is because this is plugged into a sphere map. And here you can see the seam. Without this, the seam would be more obvious. But with it, the seam is gone. And I've plugged this into the reflect shader. And now we have this very cool alien-like looking shader. And if we plug this into the replace material, we get this. And this is just a purplish portal. Next, what I did was I've used the transform 3D only to move it up, because everything we've done so far was centered in 0, and I actually want my portal to be above the ground plane. And that's all this is doing. And next I've used an override 3D, and this doesn't seem to do anything, but what it does is it actually sets our object ID to 1. So later, if we are going to render this, we have an object ID pass and can very easily separate our portal from the rest. And next I have a merge 3, and here we are actually piping in both our lights and our particles. I'm going to go back because the particles will calculate. So if we play this, yeah, you can see we have lighting going on and we have particles. I usually group my lights, and these are really just 2-point lights, both colored blue, and they're really here only to illuminate the particles and the portal a little bit. What's important if you do it like me is that you have on your Merge 3D where you plug in all your lights, that you activate pass through lights. Otherwise, those lights won't be visible in your next merge. And that's all. So back at it again, Fusion actually crashed for me. So this is now the rendered animation. And as you can see, this is looking ugly because we will need a lot of post-processing to actually make this look good. But before we're going to look at the post-processing, I'm going to talk about the particles in the next part.